Hi, this is Scott Yaris with the last in our series of brief video snippets about helping kids who stutter minimize bullying in honor of Better Hearing and Speech Month. Of course, it's June now, but we're still honoring Better Hearing and Speech Month just because this is when we got it done. What we've talked about so far is helping kids themselves about reducing their reactions to bullying, reducing their reactions to stuttering, and learning how to respond appropriately when other kids are picking on them about their speech. What I want to add today is how to help the other kids in the class or in the child's environment also respond appropriately to stuttering and to bullying. See, the problem is that other kids don't understand what stuttering is. It's not surprising. Nobody talks about stuttering. Many people hide their stuttering. Kids try to hide their stuttering. It's understandable because they feel self-conscious about it. But the more people try to hide stuttering, the more they don't talk about it, the more they try not to draw attention to it, the less people really know about it, the less they understand about it. So one of the things we need to do is bring stuttering out into the open to let the other kids, the bystanders, as I talked about last time, understand that stuttering is just something that some people do when they talk. It doesn't mean that they're not smart. It doesn't mean that they have a psychological problem. It doesn't mean that they're crazy. It doesn't mean anything other than that they have a disruption in their speech. And the more we can help our kids that we're working with explain this to other people, the better. Now, of course, they're kids, and this type of verbal explanation is challenging for any child, particularly challenging for kids who stutter. So one of the things you can do in therapy is work through with your kids what they might tell other people about stuttering. One of my favorite things to do is to ask kids, if you could tell your friends anything you wanted to tell them about your speech, what would it be? Well, often the kids have already thought about this. Think about your own lives. If you have an issue in your life, something that concerns you, something that you feel uncomfortable with, what would you like to tell the world about it? You probably know. You probably have an idea in mind. Boy, I wish other people understood this about me. What we then do is brainstorm with the child to list these things that they'd like other people to know. And then we can brainstorm about ways to tell people this information. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. One is perhaps to help the child create a brochure that is facts about stuttering. Note that all of the kids that you work with could do this because other kids need to know more about apraxia and articulation disorders and autism spectrum disorders and everything else we do. Facts about stuttering that they can put in a brochure or perhaps in a video recording like this, or perhaps in an essay that they write, or in a Jeopardy game that they produce, or in a PowerPoint type presentation, what they want the world to know. And then they can practice beginning to share some of those facts with other people. They can begin to practice sharing them with you. Remember, we start all of our therapy from easier situations to harder situations, working along a hierarchy to make it easier for the child to approach frightening situations. They can practice presenting these facts to their parents, to their best friends, to their siblings, perhaps, ultimately, to other kids in the class. And this leads to what we talk about in our books as a classroom presentation, an opportunity for the child to intentionally educate other kids about stuttering. Now, this can be done a variety of ways. For example, one way to bring stuttering out into the open is next time the child is doing a book report, help him pick a book that has a character in it who stutters. In our publications, we have a long list of books that talk about stuttering, characters who have characters in them who stutter. And then what the child can do as he's presenting his book report is say simply, I picked this book for my book report because it has a character in it who stutters just like me. What that does is it brings the stuttering out into the open so that the other kids will say, oh yeah, stuttering, that's what that is. Okay, why didn't anybody say anything? Because left to their own devices, they probably won't figure out, oh yeah, that's a disruption in the child's speech production that has to do something with his language planning skills and his motor production skills. Yeah, they won't figure that out. They just don't know. And without knowing, they don't know how to respond. So we bring it out into the open. Maybe the child could pick a book that for a book report and say, I picked this book for my book report because it has a child in it who stutters just like me, but he doesn't go to therapy and I do. And now we can acknowledge the therapy. We can bring the therapy out into the open. Or I go to therapy and I've learned these techniques Very important for the child to let the other kids know about the techniques that they're using, because otherwise the techniques themselves may stand out and seem different to other kids. And other kids may wonder, well, why is he doing that? Why is he um, starting slower? Why is he pausing right there? If they don't understand that these are techniques aimed at enhancing fluency, then that in and of itself will draw attention to the child. What we're doing is we're working toward the child ultimately being able to do a presentation in which he presents key facts about stuttering. What does he want kids to know about his speech? The fact that it's not his fault, that it's not fun to stutter, that he wishes he could make it go away, but he can't, that the techniques that he learned sound a little different, but they make it easier, but they're not hard to do. Sorry, they're not easy to do, they're very hard to do. Maybe he wants them to experience what stuttering feels like, to do a little bit of pseudo stuttering like we often do in therapy with kids. Maybe he wants them to know that he's not the only one who stutters, because the other kids may not know many other people who stutter. Maybe he wants them to know that there are 3 million people in the United States who stutter. Maybe he wants them to see another person who stutters. Maybe he wants them to know about famous people who stutter, or, in my opinion, even better, not so famous people who stutter. Doctors or teachers or cab drivers or engineers or whatever, people who are living their lives successfully and fully, even though they may stutter. This message of acceptance helps the child feel better about himself, of course, but it helps the other kids learn this all important message. This is nothing to be concerned about. This is nothing to make a big deal about. The more the other kids learn about stuttering, the more accepting they'll be of the child who stutters. And then we supplement that with information about what bullying is. Because in the classroom presentation, we have an opportunity to talk to the other kids about what bullying is. Some of the facts that we talked about way back in our first video. Bullying is never acceptable. Bullying is done because bullies feel bad about themselves. Bullies pick on you about the things that you feel bad about yourself. Bullies have that need to feed, and if we can help them meet those needs in other ways, if we can help them develop better self-esteem on their own, they'll have less need to pick on other kids. So we bring stuttering out of the open, we bring bullying out of the open, we help kids learn it's okay to stutter. It's not okay to bully. Now, planning one of these classroom presentations takes several steps. It's not something you do right away. It's not something you do the first day of therapy, and it's not something that you do at the beginning of the process for the child. First, the child will have to become desensitized to his stuttering so that he can talk about it without fear. And you'll need to plan this carefully. You need to plan it with the involvement of the parents, of the teachers, of course, of the child himself, and perhaps of some allies in the class that he may have, some friends that he may have in the class. In our workbook for children who stutter, that is in our Minimizing Bullying series, we take you through step by step how to plan, how to practice, how to present the classroom presentation. There's material for the SLPs, background work that you do to help the child prepare, and of course, material for the child who stutters. All right, that brings us to the end then of this series of videos about helping kids who stutter minimize bullying. Remember, we worked with the child himself to help him come to terms with stuttering and help him learn how to respond appropriate to bullying. We worked with the other kids in the class, the bystanders, so that they will understand more about stuttering and learn that bullying is never acceptable. If we can help even one other child in the class come to the aid of the child who's being bullied, that reduces the damage to that child's self-esteem. It makes it easier for him to accept who he is, and it makes it easier for others to accept who he is as a child who stutters. This can make a tremendous difference in a child's life, and I encourage you to always be aware of the significant risk that your school-age children who stutter are being picked on about their speech. You can make a difference, you can help diminish it, you can help minimize it, and this, of course, makes everything easier for the school-age child. More information about how to do all this, because of course I didn't tell you everything I'd like to be able to tell you. It's only a series of brief videos. It's all in our books, www.stutteringtherapyresources.com, stutteringtherapyresources.com. You can send an email to me at info@stutteringresources.com or at my name, J, my first initial, J Scott, at therapyresources.com. Please feel free to send questions along anytime. And after a bit, we'll take a little break from the videos for now, but after a bit, we'll come up with some other topics and send some other informational videos out to you. Thanks very much.